Making a good video game movie isn't hard, and I don't know why Hollywood hasn't figured that out in 20 plus years. Ever since the early 90s, with the release of the Super Mario Bros. Movie, there's always been a stigma surrounding the cinematic adaptations of video games, because most of them suck. As a whole, video game movies are very subpar, and people usually forget they exist after studios stop marketing the theatrical releases. Which isn't surprising, since there are only a handful of video game movies that have a higher rating than 30% on Rotten Tomatoes. And it's a shame, because film is my favorite medium for storytelling, and some of my favorite narratives of all time come from video games. But for some reason, studios haven't figured out how to turn this into this without butchering the material. Comic book films were in a very similar position before Fox released the first X-Men movie in 2000, and studios started to realize there was a potential market for adaptations of those properties, which led to Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, the Dark Knight trilogy, and the creation of the largest film franchise of all time. Video game movies seem to be headed in a similar direction, with the praise and financial success of Detective Pikachu, the upcoming Sonic the Hedgehog film listening to backlash from fans, and Sony establishing their own in-house production company to adapt their intellectual properties into films. Studios are starting to seem like they actually care, and because of this, the next decade could very well be the age of video game movies, with Detective Pikachu playing a similar role to Fox's X-Men for the genre. In which case, I have some notes for studios attempting to adapt video game properties into movies. As is the case with books, plays, and TV shows, creative liberties need to be taken to some degree in order to convert a concept from one form of media to another. But as is true with the adaptation process, you need to be careful about how much and what you change from the source material. Take Doom, for example. The game is about a nameless marine who fights demons from hell on Mars with a ton of crazy, over-the-top action and a vibrant red color palette while heavy metal music plays in the background. So how did they adapt that into a movie? Generic military goons, zombies, and dark hallways. Maybe the movie would have been more enjoyable if you could see anything. This movie barely has any color because you can't see the movie. Come on, Tony, you're an Oscar-nominated director of photography. Also, they renamed the BFG, a signature weapon from the games that literally stands for Big F***ing Gun, to Bioforce Gun? What were you trying to accomplish with this? The movie already has an R rating. There was no reason for this change. And will someone tell Tony to turn on a goddamn light, for the love of fuck? This is an example of taking too many creative liberties in the adaptation process, and it falls into the category of adapting a property in name only. If you're making a movie based on a video game, your goal is most likely to rely largely on brand recognition in order to sell tickets. But if the product you're giving fans doesn't remotely resemble the property they love, you're gonna do nothing but piss them off. This is why a balance between change and familiarity is essential when handling products with an existing fan base. Out of every video game movie, Detective Pikachu has done the best at finding this balance, in my opinion. Where Detective Pikachu succeeds is not its ability to adapt the story or gameplay of main series Pokémon titles, but in how it adapts the feeling you get from playing a Pokémon game. Take away the lackluster characters and basic story, and you have a film that really makes the world of Pokémon come to life on screen, which is an essential part of getting fans of the series on board for your movie. I hardly get that vibe from Assassin's Creed, Tomb Raider, or Silent Hill. And this idea is where I feel video game adaptations fail the most. Too many of them have put their focus on visually adapting gameplay on screen, and in the process, the feeling of excitement and immersion you get from playing a video game is completely lost in adaptation. When watching Assassin's Creed, I want to put myself in the shoes of the assassin, not listen to people talk about bullshit pseudoscience. When watching Silent Hill, I want to experience the fear of that environment, not watch Pyramid Head act like a generic horror movie villain. Also, I'm sorry, Bioforce Gun? Seriously, why? The purpose of a video game movie should be to bring the charm and excitement of a video game to an audience that may or may not ever pick up a controller. If I'm paying to see a movie based on a video game I like, chances are I already own that game, and I don't want to watch a clip show of footage from that game recreated with real people. For the most part, it seems video game movies are too focused on making a video game movie and forget to, you know, make an actual movie. Take the video game property away. If your film can't stand on its own, you haven't done your job as a filmmaker. To circle back a bit, Detective Pikachu has gotten tons of praise from Pokémon fans, but a large portion of audiences and critics who are unfamiliar with the series have said the movie is way harder to enjoy if you know nothing about Pokémon. If you're making a movie for the fans, and they're not the only intended audience, then don't release something that alienates anyone who hasn't played the video games. Another major issue I see from studios is their uncanny ability to pick games with little to no narrative value. Tell me, Threshold Entertainment, how exactly are you gonna turn this into a trilogy of films? Don't do this. There are so many narratively driven video games whose film adaptations were scrapped in favor of things like Rampage and Hitman. And it's criminal. I truly believe you can turn anything into a movie if you have a good idea for a story. But at a certain point, the movie you're making isn't going to remotely resemble the intellectual property you're adapting, and brand recognition only gets you so far. I really don't get why anyone thought a movie based on Rampage was a good idea. Look at this clip from the game. The lore is deep with this one. I know studios are only concerned with potential box office earnings from using an existing brand, but I promise almost no one in the target demographic for this movie is going to realize Rampage with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is based on Rampage, the classic arcade title. I didn't even realize it at first, and I actually pay attention to these types of things. Side note, Dwayne Johnson was also in Doom, and we really need to stop letting him sign on to roles in video game movies. Hopefully, after seeing the financial success of Detective Pikachu, studios will start to realize the franchise potential for video game films is very, very high if the movies don't suck. And maybe they'll try to evolve the genre a bit more. Hopefully someday we'll get the video game movie equivalent of Iron Man or The Dark Knight, but I'm really not getting my hopes up. Also, I'm serious, Bioforce Gun. Who thought that was a good idea? Why the fuck? Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and comment down below letting me know your general thoughts on video game movies. I think they're all pretty bad. If you want to see more content like this, make sure you subscribe. I'm going to be doing video essays like this a lot more often now. But that's it for today. My name is Kevin Crust, and I'll see you guys next time.